Ora si registrerà la
conferenza. We can start.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, the Redress Network, for providing this platform and the opportunity to share my current work. I hope everyone can see my first slide clearly, just so that I can continue. So I'm currently based in Italy at Parthenope University, and my PhD.
Apologies, can I ask you to, sorry Amos, I just received a message that there seems to be an issue with the connection because someone is trying to join in, but they are not able. Can I ask you to wait just a minute, please?
Sure, no problem, no problem.
Thank you, just a second. There was an issue with the link. A few are going to join in a second. Apologies for the delay, but they should be able to join now.
Hi, Patrizia. Yes, Sergio called me saying he's not able to join. I'm going to talk to him and see what's the problem. I suggest that in any case we make a start in a couple of minutes.
Ora si registrerà la conferenza. Ora si registrerà la conferenza.
Da questo momento non c'è scheda.
Amos,
Morning, everybody.
I think it is better if we make a start because otherwise we're going to finish
Okay.
too late. So, yeah, make a start.
Okay, once again, thank you for organizing this platform, and appreciate that we have an opportunity to present and give an update on what we are currently working on. So just a brief introduction. I'm Amos. I'm currently based at the University of the North in Naples. And my topic of research that I'm focusing on is the recovery of energy materials from the collection and treatment of organic waste from urban, industrial, and rural sectors in a bioeconomy context. And I'm being supervised by Prof. Ujati and Dr. Gabriela. A worldwide population of nearly 7 billion people, coupled with rapid developments in some regions, and of course, some improved freedoms and welfare, is leading to tremendous consumption of resources. And this is leading to, this is resulting in the generation of large quantities of waste, thus creating enormous pressure on local waste management authorities. And food and agricultural waste represent a growing problem nowadays, and at the same time also coupled with the dominance of fossil-based fuels, which are contributing to the release of significant quantities of carbon emissions, causing global warming and climate change. And there is now an urgent need to seek new ways of accessing renewable energy, clean energy through low carbon economies, specifically at EU level and as well as globally. And we need important legislations and policies that lean towards renewable energy, and at the same time subsequently redefine waste management towards preventive circular bioeconomy approaches. And in this case, biomass is expected to play a significant role in this transition. And at the same time, the full exploitation of biomass requires appropriate environmental assessments. The research gap is whether to define what. So most of the literature around circular bioeconomy is focused on what is circular economy and why is it better, but that only keeps us in the realm of theory. So there is need for many case studies with examples from which to see circular bioeconomy principles in action. And for this reason, a compilation of evaluated case studies is appropriate in order to understand and also to extensively probe the interrelationship between linear production system as well as circular systems, and at the same time to also assess the sustainability of site production processes. And by having this circular economy assessment, this would benefit companies and organizations much more than discussing semantic differences, although this is also relevant. But if we assess circular economy, we help to understand how a bioeconomy operates, and also help to support decision making and contribute to supporting information in developing integrated organic waste management plans. The main objective, I will not go into the specifics, but I'll just give the main objective. It's related to addressing questions and concerns that relate to environmental implications of circular production systems by comparing them to the traditional linear model paradigm. The details of the specific objectives can be found on the description of action plans. So the methodological framework that I'm currently using will help to fulfill the task of providing a bioeconomy model based on investigated case studies on waste residues, which can be processed to recover chemicals, materials, and energy. This takes a holistic approach so that we can understand the environmental implications of this shift from circular from linear to a circular paradigm. So we have identified a multiple number of case studies which have been empirically tested in EU and non-EU locations, in Italy, in Canada, and in Africa. So these case studies have been comprehensively evaluated using the life cycle assessment method and the energy accounting method. The reason why we are integrating LCA and the energy accounting method is that each method answers to different questions. If you want to understand the user side approach, we are using the life cycle assessment. And if you want to understand the environmental contribution, the ecological contribution to your system or to the production of your product or your service, we will use the image accounting method. And we also rely upon software such as the SIMA Pro and databases such as the EcoInvent and the energy databases. So the oil sector, one of the case studies, the oil sector in Italy has significant socioeconomic and environmental and cultural relevance. However, the environmental impact of production and consumption models are considerably causing large quantities of, in terms of, they are demanding large quantities of resources in terms of fuels, chemicals, as well as the cost of disposing the resulting residues. So I will take you through one of the case studies where we looked at circular economy parts in the olive oil industry with a life cycle assessment look into environmental performance and benefits, where initially we assessed the linear production process from the olive oil, from the agricultural production phase up to the bottling phase where you get your olives. And we also took advantage. We also analyzed the after-use phase where we collected waste cooking oil and identified potential ways through which we can obtain bioenergy to act as a feedback, renewable energy that can substitute or replace the fossil-based energy sources that are initially used in the production process. And at the same time, we also looked at how can we polarize the pomace waste, that is a byproduct of the linear production process, to recover pomace oil as well as bioenergy. And this bioenergy is at the same time used in the upstream phases to replace and substitute fossil-based biodiesel in the identified case studies. And from the analysis of these streams, where we substitute and replace fossil-based inputs with renewable inputs that have been obtained from byproducts, we have evaluated the systems through the LCA method, and we have identified the benefits of the reuse of core products. And from the LCA results, which I'll share later, the impacts are reduced 2 to 3 times than from the linear production system. Now I'm taking you through the integration process where we have integrated LCA and EMA, and the initial process was to carry out a life cycle assessment of the identified processes, both linear and the circular economy process. And in this case, within the life cycle assessment methodology, it is limited because inputs that are locally available as well as imported inputs. So to address this limitation, for example, to include the ecological contribution to this process, for example, inputs such as the wind, rainfall, and the sun, and also to take into consideration labor and services, we then adopted the energy accounting method. Because in agricultural, particularly in agricultural systems, energy evaluations are suitable because these systems, they use natural and man-made contributions which interact in order to obtain the final product. So it emphasizes the role of ecological inputs that basically constitute the basic life support system of living beings. So, these are the results where we are comparing life cycle assessment results and energy values. So from the left of the slide here, represented in red, you can see the linear production system that has been analyzed and the environmental impacts evaluated. The values showing characterized values compared to the secular scenarios that we developed. And I've indicated this in red and green just to show red is danger, this is not the way to go, this is not sustainable. And the green side has actually indicated the environmental impact that has been achieved by implementing secular approaches. And as I've said already, that a comparison of these two results from the linear systems and the secular systems, we have actually found out that the environmental impacts have actually reduced 2 to 3 times lower than in the linear system. At the same time, from the far right here, these are the Amos results, where in this case, just for simplicity, I'll focus on the environmental load ratio indicator, where also it confirms our findings from the LCA results that it indicates decreased environmental pressure that has been achieved by a greater share of the renewable fraction of the renewable inputs and energy flows to reduce the fossil-based renewable energy fraction. Again, we have also identified another case study, and in the challenge of transforming waste into useful products that can be reused in a circular perspective, the Italian wine industry represents a very suitable model for the application of bioeconomy principles that includes the polarization of agricultural and food waste. And again, we have analyzed the traditional production of wine to identify hotspots that need improvement and at the same time to reduce our environmental impacts, and also develop some secular patents through which we can obtain bio-based products that can be used to replace and substitute some of the initial inputs that have been used in the traditional production system. So the side chains and secular patents were integrated within the linear production models. And again, the environmental benefits have been realized. I'll show that in the following slide. So the environmental impacts achieved by implementing the secular approaches also resulted in the linear system, in particular in specific impact indicators such as global warming, freshwater eutrophication, and mineral resource scarcity impact categories. And again, I've indicated with green just to show some of the benefits of implementing some of these secular patterns. And in comparison with the energy results, it seems to confirm again that the environmental load ratio is almost halved. That's indicating some decreased environmental pressure that has been achieved through the share of renewable fraction that is coming from the organic residues. We now cross to the Atlantic Ocean, to Canada. There is an increased demand for renewable energy nowadays in the North American, which compels the exploration of new substrate and the development of new technology for biogas production, and the appropriate transformation and polarization of biogas. It offers immense environmental and economic opportunities within the Canadian sector due to the increased focus on renewable natural gas. So we analyzed the environmental bed and load of an anaerobic digestion facility in Ontario, Canada, to again identify the hotspot areas and critical areas that need process improvement. and to reduce environmental impact, and also at the same time obtain value from the organic waste. And the environmental impacts of upgrading biogas into not only biogas, but also into heat and renewable natural gas was also explored. And byproducts of the AD facility performed exceptionally well from an environmental point of view as compared to the fossil-based inputs that are used in the AD facility and the other processes that take place within the AD facilities. And again, one of our observations was that the digestate contains a significant proportion of plastics and wastewater, which was discussed in one of the papers that we recently submitted to a journal. So I will not delve much into this. Now we're moving to Africa, to Zimbabwe, and poor planning and policy inconsistencies are some of the factors that affect the subsequent management of organic waste. And currently in Zimbabwe and many other African countries, they do not have a well-defined bioeconomy policies. And as such, opportunities to harness the organic waste into biomass and reusable resources are often missed. And as you can see here, this is an image. These are the photographic images that were taken during the COVID lockdown period in Zimbabwe, and there was so much inconsistencies and confusion in terms of how best can we treat the organic waste. In this case, the organic waste that you can see here is the organic products that were confiscated from the vendors that were trading, because our economy basically, I would say that it depends so much on the informal activity. So many people depend on vending. So when the lockdown was put in place, a lot of people did not really want to stay at home because it's not a choice. So they had to go out and look for money and sell their organic waste. And when it was confiscated, we saw some images where, as you can see on that area that has a red arrow, the organic waste was being banned. So this raised a lot of criticism through social media and all that. So I decided, maybe we can expand the focus and also look at exploring the potential of a bioeconomy within an African context and find opportunities for research in terms of how best can the African Union, as well as Zimbabwe specifically, can they develop policies towards exploring organic waste. But in this case, the two most prominent disposal options currently in Zimbabwe are the organic digestion and composting. This is the model that would work for a country like Zimbabwe, where, for example, instead of burning, would rather collect all the waste to receptor sites to produce biogas, which can then address the energy problems that we face back home, and also provide the natural gas pipeline that is required for cooking purposes in many households in Africa. And now, having described all these case studies, I'll show you some of the, just a summary of the secular mosaics. So this is just a summary what I've just been talking about. So the conclusions are that there are some indications of positive contribution by production of environmental impacts. At the same time, you can obtain value from these byproducts. And so we need to change our perception towards organic waste. It is no longer possible to disregard it, because from these results, we have already seen some environmental improvements. And the substitution of fossil-based materials with bio-based materials is feasible, this is from an environmental point of view because we have not carried out economic or social assessments. So it is also possible to scale up from these case studies to then also explore the bioeconomic potentials of a region. I've already given an example that maybe in countries like Zimbabwe, maybe African countries that have not yet launched any policies towards the exploration of organic waste may take advantage of this new feedstock material that is readily available in many communities and in many city councils. So insights from the selected case studies and from the recent literature have exhibited some good convergence of what circular economy and bioeconomy means. And the sketch diagram that you are seeing there is just showing all the various ways and pathways through which a circular bioeconomy can look like. And just to summarize, where I have throughout this year carried out some literature review, participated in some scientific activities, research and training, and collaborated with researchers in Italy, Canada, and Zimbabwe, and the researchers, within our early stage researchers. And one of the major things is to survive this pandemic. You know, it has become a very difficult task. And well, some of those are the awards that have been conferred in the past year. And that is a list of the manuscripts and that I've submitted. Some have been accepted and some are under review. To my fellow ESRs, I'm sure you know this journey. Some of the papers in the author's mind, it goes in a clockwise direction, but in the reviewer's mind, it's the other way around. But well, the struggle is real, but it is worth it. Let's keep pushing. And I have just finished my presentation. Thank you all for listening. I can gladly receive your feedback from you.
Thank you, Amos, for your great presentation, and congratulations for your great work and for the results that you are getting. Is there any question for Amos? And otherwise, I can kick off with a question.
Can I?
Sure.
Amos, can you hear me? I guess.
Yes, Prof, I can hear you.
Thanks for the presentation, and it's not really my topic, so please forgive me for my question.
Okay.
Basically, what is the theoretical contribution, and how would you convert this into publications? What would you like to do there? Really trying to look forward.
Okay. Basically, I've identified these case studies just so that I can understand the environmental implications of the transition towards a circular economy from a linear paradigm. So from these case studies, I wanted to understand if this is really possible or not. So from the current findings at the moment, we can really be confident to say that it is possible from an environmental point of view. So in terms of the contribution, in terms of research from these findings, we are using the results from each of these different case studies to understand the complex nature of organic waste valorization and organic waste management in different sectors. Then to be able to come up with conclusions in the end. So at the moment, I'm not really sure of the results, but for sure the environmental benefits have been identified. I don't know if I responded to your question.
I have another very short question, Amos. Of course, this is great work. You have got 2 papers accepted. But I think, probably we could easily get 20 more papers published looking after olive oil. We can look at cheese making. We can then turn to provolone del Monaco in Acerra, in Agerola, sorry, or we can look at different qualities of wine. Putting all of these together, what is the key policy message that we can draw from this? And are you thinking, in the final stage of your PhD to look at all these from a unified perspective and putting together some policy recommendations? Because of course, through your case studies, we are showing that these circular economy solutions have the potential to work. But what is that is preventing the adoption of these solutions on a wider scale? I think, this would be the interesting bit I would focus upon in the next year, if you have time, given that, you have got some great case studies, but probably also to respond to what Stefan was saying, I would also emphasize a bit now the policy angle. Can these solutions work in practice? If yes, what's needed? What's needed from a policy perspective or from a business perspective to make the wineries, to convert wineries into biorefineries? Have you thought about exploring this dimension?
Indeed, yes. It's just that by coincidence, actually, I was having a discussion with my supervisor, Prof. Sergio, and we discussed about this, that we now need to expand the focus from case studies and now at least look at the sectors and even at the economies, just to borrow some lessons that we are picking from these case studies to then expand the focus for policy recommendation. But for sure, we need to change our perception towards organic waste. There are some benefits out of the polarization of biomass, and that's for sure. But like, I take the advice that's also coming from you and also from the question from Prof. Sharing, that maybe we now need to expand the focus from case studies up to maybe look at the sectors or the economies and to see if we can still obtain the same results.
I think, you are in a privileged position to do that because you have got 2 papers published, you have got an impressive pipeline, you have got primary data you can rely upon. So I think, you're ready for the next challenge, I would say. But other than that, great progress and congratulations to you and your supervisors for such excellent results.
Yeah. I have a quick question.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Adolf, go on.
Yeah.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Well done, Amos. You are doing a really good job. So well done on that. I want to ask a question. Whilst we are aiming at delivering the objectives of the project, there's also the PhD angle. And from the work that you're actually doing, what would you say are some of the main strides that you are making? Is it at the methodology side in terms of the interplay between LC and SRG? Is it applications in terms of the interesting case studies that you are doing, or the decision support in terms of how that would inform the policy making or even decision making at the firm level? Where are the main values that you are making, or the main strides that you are actually making?
Thank you for that question. The main strides, I would say that currently there hasn't been, I would say there has been very few studies, I'm not aware of any, that have actually evaluated linear and secular production patterns. And in one of our accepted papers, we have mentioned that contribution that we are bringing into the Board of Science, that we need to assess this, what we are talking about, because in most cases it's written and it's theoretical, but we are bringing in the empirical evidence from the case studies that we have been working on to present the secular benefits from the different case studies that we have been working on. So that's one. And this case study, in terms of benefits on my research, it's in terms of application. So for each case study that we are looking at, we are not only looking at that particular case study, we are also expanding the focus in our discussions to also look at the whole sector and the whole industry. Like, for example, the winery paper, it speaks to the whole sector, not only in Italy, but also global implications. And these case studies, of course, we are not only using LCA and the energy accounting, we are also working with the industry itself. So in other words, we are engaging the participating stakeholders and also hearing their opinions. Like, for example, last summer I was in Canada, I met quite a number of stakeholders within the biogas sector, who indicated that we now need to expand the focus, not only from biogas, but also to recover other bio-based materials rather than just bioenergy. And even at policy level, if you have noticed that most policies are only supporting the recovery of renewable energy, but they are not really supporting the recovery of bio-based materials and chemicals. So this is another contribution that is also coming from some of these case studies, that the focus has been mainly on renewable bio-based energy, but it's not looking at the recovery of other platform bio-based materials.
Thank you, Amos.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Move on now. Jayani, would you like to start your presentation, given that you are the next in the list?
Okay.
Thank you once again, Amos.
You should now be able to present.
Sorry, I'm trying to...
Yeah. Can you see the presentation?
Is that okay now?
You can, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go, Jayani, whenever you want.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. And what I'm presenting today is the collaboration in circular supply chains. So I'm ESR number 3, Jayani Sudusinghe. I'm based in University of UniKassel. I'm working with Professor Stefan Soyering on this topic. So yeah. So the agenda for the presentation today is on, first I would introduce the topic on collaboration in circular supply chains. Then I would present the research progress so far, what I have done, and I would mainly focus on the second research paper currently I'm working on based on the Delphi studies. So I would go into detail what's Delphi study, why we have selected the Delphi study, and what we have been doing so far in the Delphi study method, and the next steps like future work that we are planning to do based in the Delphi study, and also what's the contribution of this second paper that we are working on. So circular supply chain, one way to define circular supply chain is as the integration between reverse and forward supply chains. Therefore, good relationships need to be maintained between different actors in the forward and reverse supply chain. So therefore, the scholars have found out that it is quite important to have collaboration between organizations. So other than that, collaboration is found to be quite important because there can be different management limitations in the physical and energy flows. Because of that, to overcome these limitations, collaboration should be there in between partners. Other than that, the business models are shifting more towards service-oriented approaches. Therefore, like collaborative consumption models also are playing a very important role in circular economy context. Because of that, also the relationship with even specifically with customers is quite important. Because of that, collaboration has been found out to be playing a major role in circular supply chain context. Thirdly, the emergence of industrial symbiosis networks again point out that the importance of collaborations. But however, although there is more attention being given to the circular supply chains in the literature, but collaboration aspect has been barely addressed. Therefore, we are focusing on the collaboration in circular supply chains. So I have already submitted the first research paper into International Journal of Production Economics. This is a systematic literature review, and this is currently under review. And I'm working on 2 other research papers right now. One is a Delphi study, the other one is a case study. So I'll be presenting more into the Delphi study and what we have been doing so far. And other than that, regarding the case study, we are in progress of conducting interviews with experts in the field. So this is the second research paper I'm presenting on Delphi study. There we are addressing 3 main research questions in order to fill the research gap we found in literature. So we'll be looking into the drivers and barriers for supply chain collaboration in a circular economy context, and how these drivers and barriers ultimately affect the supply chain collaboration practices in circular economy context, and why does the role of collaboration differs from a linear or a traditional supply chain perspective to the circular supply chain perspective. So why we selected a Delphi study? Mainly because the scholarly discussion is quite underexplored when it comes to supply chain collaborations in a circular economy context. And also, given the research questions that we are addressing in this research, this is more appropriate for exploratory theory building. And when it comes to Delphi study, this technique has been a well-established technique in the SCM discourse in order to investigate the factors influencing for a particular topic or a problem area. So with the Delphi study, we look into the reliable opinion of a group of experts. We conduct a series of questionnaires in depth and try to get the controlled opinion feedback. Throughout this Delphi study, we maintain the anonymity of the participating experts. And as the facilitator, we summarize the feedback and provide it as additional information to the experts so they can, we can conduct kind of a conversation as well. And also as the facilitator, we statistically analyze the inputs and provide again the feedback of each round. And this decides on provision, this kind of maintain a controlled feedback. Sorry. Yeah. So how we conducted the Delphi study, we approached 167 experts, and these involved members of the Redress project and also some experts or the scholars who have published in peer-reviewed journal articles based on supply chain and operations management perspective in circular economy context. So in the first round, we approached these 167 experts, and we are planning to conduct the Delphi study in 3 rounds. So in the first round, we'll be doing a brainstorming session with the experts. And in the second round, we would narrow down the factors that we have identified from the first round. And again, in the third round, we will be looking into the importance based on the ratings scheme using a 5-point Likert scale. So with the first round, we asked 4 open-ended questions for the brainstorming of the brainstorming session in the first round. So the 4 questions involved are the drivers, barriers, supply chain collaboration practices, and what are the reasons for the differences in these supply chain collaboration in linear and circular supply chains. So out of these 167 experts, we received feedback from 40 experts, so with a 24% response rate. And as you can see, out of the 40 experts, 50% of the experts are coming from academia, and the rest 50% coming from policymaking and industry. So other than that, we received, like, from the 4 experts, we received 493 answers for all the 4 questions. Then we did a content analysis for this first round, and for each question, we separately did the content analysis. So for each question, we first identified the popular wordings, and then we categorized them based on these the context that they have mentioned. And then we again combined these similar categories and coded them as one factor. So whenever we had an issue and also finalizing these categories, I discussed with Felipe Biman and Professor Soyering and also Dr. Philip Sauer. So after discussing among ourselves, we came into a conclusion with, like, the final factors, and this improved the validity and the reliability of the analysis as well. So for the 4 questions that I asked, I came across, like, 7 factors for each drivers and barriers, the 2 questions, and 8 factors for practices, and 5 factors or 5 reasons for differences. So if I go into detail, what we have found out for the drivers, as you can see, majority of the experts are saying coercive and normative pressure, like the pressure coming from customers and external parties, as one of the leading drivers for supply chain collaboration. And then achieving economic benefits, also one of, like, the leading drivers. Other than that, we identify the high interdependency among supply chain partners because of the complementary competences. And securing companies' strategic position was also identified as a driver. Then the need to respond to operational changes, mutual goals among partners, and protecting the environment were the other drivers that we identified by the responses of the experts. So if we move on to the barriers, there were 7 barriers, starting, like, the top 2 barriers being misalignment in strategic decisions because of the cultural differences, and the issues related to information sharing, for instance, like unwillingness to share information, confidentiality issues, so on. Other than that, we identified concerns regarding financial and economic performance and the nature of the supply chains being long, geographically dispersed and fragmented as another barrier, and also lack of knowledge and skills on collaboration, regulatory issues, and disparities in technological capabilities as another barrier. So when it comes to collaboration practices, the 2 prominent collaboration practices identified by the experts were collaborative planning and incentive alignment. Other than that, joint product design, selecting partners for sustainability, with sustainability orientation, and then vertical integration or collaboration with customers and suppliers, and also being a part of the industrial symbiosis, joint knowledge creation through innovation, and collaboration with government and local authorities. So these were the 8 collaboration practices we identified. And why does role of collaboration differ from linear supply chain to circular supply chains? So this was, like, the 4th question, and based on the feedback or the responses we received, 5 reasons were identified. One of the major reasons was the improved engagement of supply chain partners. Other than the suppliers and consumers, there are third parties involved, like government, competitors, and non-governmental organizations. And also the second reason was pointed out as the purpose of supply chain has moved away from like expanded from economic objectives, merely focusing on economic objectives, but to more triple bottom line oriented social, economic, and environmental focus objectives. And also complexities in circular supply chain operations was identified as a reason for this difference or more focus on collaboration practices in circular supply chains. And also in the circular supply chains, reverse supply chain performance has been quite improved. Because of that, the supplier and customers sometimes switch their roles. So supplier becomes the customer and customer can become a supplier. So because of this duality role, also collaboration is pointed out to be important by the expert. And also with the new business models coming up in circular economy context, there are new products and services coming up. Because of that also, they pointed out collaboration to be different from linear supply chains to circular supply chains. So these were the factors we identified from the first round. So based on these factors or these items that we identified from the first round, we developed the second round questionnaire. So this is a 4 closed-ended questions, again focusing on drivers, barriers, collaboration practices, and the reasons for differences. So in the second round, we asked the experts to rank these answers based on the degree of importance that they think, and also they can provide supplementary comments if they think something needs to be added or something needs to be amended for the responses they provided. So regarding the second round, we already conducted a pilot study, but the next step is for us to distribute it to the expert. So you may also be receiving it since you are a member of the Redress project, and we think that you are suitable to be considered as an expert for this study. So once we receive the feedback again from the second round, we would be conducting the third round based on the answers that we get from the round 2. But currently the round 3 we are currently planning it. It's under discussion. So our plan is to develop the questionnaire in a manner where we ask the experts to rate these different factors and identify again like how they think these factors to be important to the relevant question. And we are planning to use some statistical techniques to identify how these factors are interconnected. So ultimately, the plan is to present this kind of a conceptual framework where we look into all these 4 constructs very deeply, like what are the drivers, what are the barriers, and the reasons for differences and the practices. And also importantly, look into how these 4 constructs are connected to each other, like how drivers and barriers affect the practices, supply chain collaboration practices, and how the reasons that we identified for the different role of collaboration can be a mediator or moderator in this relationship. So this is what we have planned so far. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would really welcome your feedback, comments, suggestions to further improve the current study that we are doing on Delphi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jayani. Questions, feedback? I would like to kick off.
Sergio. First of all, congratulations. This is a very important topic. The first is just a comment. Is in general, in ecology, we talk about collaboration and competition as 2 different attitudes that depend on the availability of resources. When resources are abundant, competition is more important. The important thing is convert resources into a product and go to the market before other competitors. And this is what the most important ecologists in the world, the 2 Hodum brothers, have wrote many times in their papers. But when resources shrink, when there are less resources, then collaboration is much more important, and this is why I like your work, because we are now in a time with resources shrinking. So it is important that you work on this, but surprisingly, there is no question to the people, to the, no explicit question about the basis of resources to the experts you have contacted, and therefore they may be unaware of this very important thing. I remember in one of the Davos conferences, the conferences where the very rich people meet and decide what we, the poor, should do, they said circular economy is important because the basis of material is shrinking. It will come a time there will be no materials enough for our business, and therefore we have to become circular and sustainable. Oh, we must do it. We are forced to do this. So the experts have not been questioned and should be about this. The second comment, I don't know what's the answer. This is really a question. Your 4 questions to the experts got. The first one, about 150 answers. The second one, well, if I remember, maybe under 40, sorry. The second one under 33, then under 30, and then 80. Yeah. Do you think is there a reason that many experts have no idea what to answer to the 4th and to the 3rd question? Maybe this is very important to know. I don't know why, and I guess if you know, if you can say something about this.
Yes, especially regarding the 4th question, like the reasons for differences of collaboration between linear and circular supply chain. So this was one of the feedback I received in another research conference. So there also one of the, I would say, scholar pointed out, so what's the real difference? Like this has not been discussed. So even in literature, what we found out was like, they say collaboration is quite important and so on and so forth, but they do not like, none of the scholars that have gone deeper into the collaboration perspective, like you said, Sergio, clearly, like they say like we should collaborate because the resources are limiting and so on and so forth, but still like they have not gone into detail. Maybe even regarding the less number of answers for the 4th question is maybe it's the first time even they are thinking about the differences, these reasons for this difference. So like in the questionnaire, we asked them to at least reply to us like at least 3 factors for each question. So as you can see in most of all the cases, like if you take like the 3 responses as the average, so all 40 people, so 120. So we can see like more than 120 has been answered in the first 3 questions. So there are experts who have responded even more than 3 answers for this question. But like you said, especially in the 4th question is the one we are really lacking the answers from the experts. So I guess it's because it's quite under the discussion. Maybe with our study, we can really create kind of a good discussion among scholars at least.
Yeah, maybe you have too many professors and not enough people with the hands-on, the outside economy, the outside business.
Yeah, maybe Sergio, with the suggestion that you present, maybe we can look into like who have responded clearly for this, the 4th question. Is it from academia or more from the industry? We can look more into detail with the analysis. Thank you so much for pointing that out. We can look into that.
Thank you, Jayani. I think we have a great question from Mira in the chat, saying that essentially the drivers you list seem to be very generic drivers to engage in corporate sustainability. How this is specifically related to closed loop supply chains, circular supply chains,
And also, it seems that experts have different views on collaboration practices. Can this variance in characterizing collaboration lead to different answers in drivers and barriers? Two very interesting points to consider. I don't know if you want to answer to this, Jayani, but yeah, I think, you know, this can just be in general points to consider for the future.
Regarding the first question, how much of this address motivation for circular supply chain collaboration specifically? Maybe like just with these drivers that we have already got from the first round, I guess it's too early to answer that question. Maybe with the second and third round, as we go along and ask experts again to maybe arrange them in the degree of importance, I guess we can get a much better view on that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Please ask if my answer did not really answer your question, Mira. And regarding the second one, experts have different views on collaboration practices. Can this variance characterizing different answers in drivers and barriers? Yes. And the other thing, when it comes to our collaboration practices, with the systematic literature review I've done, what I've realized is like some of the collaboration practices that have been quite discussed in the traditional supply chain, traditional supply chain is not that much discussed in the circular economy context. For instance, there were so many discussions going on vendor managed inventory and just in time kind of practices as collaboration practices, but they were mostly discussed practices in the traditional or the linear supply chain discourse, I would say. But when it comes to circular economy practices, through my literature, I found that they are not like the most important practices that are coming up, but most likely being a part of industrial symbiosis. So there are some new practices. Even from the case studies, they have found that the new practices are coming because of the circular economy context. So yeah, that would be quite interesting to see. And also, like I showed in the last slide, how these three things are connected. This would be quite interesting to see, like, as we go along with the Delphi study, and if we can see whether they are really affecting their practices and which practices are affected by which drivers and which barriers. That would be quite interesting.
Thank you, Jayani. Excellent work, excellent answers. Tommaso, any question quickly?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Jayani. Congratulations, like really a very good work. I liked it. My question is, when you talked with the experts, how like did you define with them like the circular economy context, like or a circular supply chain? Did you define it like a linear supply chain with some incremental improvement, some forms of closed loop, or like you considered only like this structurally and disruptive circular supply chain, like circular business model?
We provided some definitions in the questionnaire. So we mainly focused on the term collaboration because circular economy perspective, we didn't go to define like what is circular economy per se, because we sent to specifically to people who have worked in the circular economy or who have expert knowledge on circular economy. So those who have published specifically in circular economy perspective from a supply chain management and operations management perspective. And regarding the circular supply chain definition, we were going more into their open loop and closed loop connection between these two aspects. So not more like we didn't go into detail because the main focus was on the supply chain collaboration perspective. Then given that the experts are coming from circular economy perspective, we didn't go into like express them specifically. This is what we are looking at.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we've had an excellent discussion and conscious of time because all of us are quite busy. So I was talking to Sania, and we have mutually decided to postpone her presentation to the next slot, and possibly, Sania, is that okay with you, or do you want to do it now?
Yeah, that's fine for me. I don't have any issue. I'm just happy to see you all.
Yeah, no, because I think, you know, it's rather than rushing it now in 20 minutes, because we are already over time, it's better to have it next time, that is the 12th of March, if I'm not wrong. And maybe, you know, we can revise the schedule, because it makes sense to have just 2 presentations per time, so that, you know, we can have a good amount of debate following the presentations, because now, you know, we are quite at an advanced stage of what you're doing, so questions can be quite detailed. So I would say there is time for a final question related to Jayani's presentation, if somebody has it. Okay, so I have one question, Jayani. When you talked about, I saw you were referring to multi-criteria decision-making methods in your last slide. What do you want to do with them, and what kind of method are you thinking of applying?
Yes, Andrea, that's a good question, because we haven't decided it yet, but still we were thinking of using more, like, since we have like different factors, so more like a factor analysis based kind of a statistical technique. So that's why we were thinking about maybe something similar to analytic hierarchical process, like an MCDM technique. So to identify like what are the most important drivers and barriers and how they can at least affecting the collaboration practices. But that would all depend on the number of responses we get for the 3rd round, because if we get like more responses, then we can even go for some statistical techniques like partial least square structural equation modeling even. But still we are quite under the discussion to which methods to use for that.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, in case, you know, you decide to use AHP, probably what you can look into is AMP, the network variant of AHP, just taking into account, you know, that the factors that you are employing might be in a way linked to each other, that might be interdependencies. So in those cases, AMP is regarded as a better option, even if its implementation is a little bit more complex, especially when you need to have practitioners filling in tables. But yeah, that's something that we can consider at a later stage. Other than that, yeah, also in your case, excellent progress, and yeah, very good for having the literature review paper already under review and for working on these other outcomes.
Thank you.
Any other question? Otherwise, we can call it a day. It has been, I think, an excellent display of your progress. Clearly, both of you are doing very well. This was also testified by slightly poor time management, I would say, but it was not really your fault. Is that, you know, you have got really a lot to say. That is a good sign. So possibly, you know, this is also something for us to learn. 10 minutes, the 10 minutes we had envisaged are clearly not enough. So we will have the next session just with 2 speakers. That's more manageable in such a way that we can allocate 30 minutes each, so that basically, the presentation can last 20 minutes. That is what you talked about today, and then the rest for Q&A. Thank you, Stefan, for your approval. And yeah, I think that's good. It clearly shows that we are on the right path, that you are becoming experts in fields, authorities in the field of the circular economy. So keep up with the good work, and I hope that the presentations from Jayani and Amos can also serve as inspiration for everybody else. So thank you very much for everybody. We will be meeting next week because we have a seminar next week with Trevor Zink about the circular economy rebound effect. So another great speaker. And then, of course, we will revise the calendar of the ESRs presentations with Sanya, who will be the next speaker. So me and Patrizia will look at that. I hope this session was useful. I think the quality of the feedback you received was quite good. It can help you gaining some thoughts about what to do next. And I think this is something we need to do on a regular basis in such a way that we keep the whole consortium informed about what you're doing. So thank you very much, and see you next week for the seminar. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.